Victoria will remain in lockdown for months after soaring case numbers force the state to join New South Wales in ditching a COVID zero target. Vaccination is now the only path to freedom. Lockdown won't lift before 70% are fully vaccinated.
New South Wales is also aiming for that magic number, but any relief is weeks, if not months away. And in the meantime, the pressure on the national economy is growing. Let's get the latest on the ground from our reporters Lara Himes in Sydney and Eden Hennanen in Melbourne. Good morning both. Eden, kicking off with you. So that goal in Victoria of trying to reach zero community cases has pretty much now been abandoned.
Good morning. Yes, that's right, Michael. And some pretty grim news yesterday. Victoria recorded 120 locally acquired cases over that 24-hour period. Now, that's the highest jump Victoria's seen in almost a year. So 20 of those cases were in isolation. That leaves 100 out in the community while infectious. That leaves 900 active cases across the state. And that's why yesterday Premier Daniel Andrews basically said Victorians shouldn't hold out hope that case numbers will drop in the coming weeks. Instead, the emphasis should be on Victorians getting vaccinated at state-run hubs like the Royal Exhibition buildings behind me here in Carlton. Now, he said in order for restrictions to ease in Victoria over the coming weeks, 70% of Victorians will need to get their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine by late September, and 70% will need to get their second dose by October. Now, just to give you an idea of where we're at the moment, currently, 57% of Victorians have had their single dose of COVID-19 vaccine. 35% have had their double dose. So 57% at the moment. Hopefully in the coming weeks, that will get to 70% and more restrictions will ease. But in some slightly positive news overnight, we heard that from midnight tonight, playgrounds will open in Melbourne across Victoria with one parent or guardian able to go, but they must check in with a QR code. And in-home childcare will also be resumed for essential workers. So some slightly positive news there, Michael, but big emphasis on getting those vax numbers up over the coming weeks.
Big emphasis indeed, Eden. Thank you. Lara Himes in Sydney. COVID deaths in New South Wales have reached a milestone.
Well, we have reached a grim milestone with 100 deaths have now been recorded to this particular Delta outbreak. This came on the day where New South Wales posted more than 1,100 COVID cases. We are expected to be reaching that 70% single-dose vaccination target today, although a lot of the talk has still been surrounding the 70% double-dose vaccination target. Now, we're expected to reach that goal by mid-October or so. We do know that there'll be more freedoms afforded to us when we do reach that, although we still don't know what they are, and there's still some talks developing behind the scenes as to when they'll be announced. But we did get some insight from the Premier into her thinking of what that is likely to be yesterday. She mentioned that compliance is going to be an issue, so making sure compliance can be ensured. So perhaps those freedoms may be involving a commercial business where you'll be required to use a QR check-in code and have your vaccination status checked, as opposed to a home gathering. But we did have some good news for the regions, particularly for towns that have a population that are mainly Indigenous. The people there that have faced some challenges with housing and isolation because they've been impacted by COVID. The state government will now set up 30 motorhomes in the town of Wilcannia to house those who have been told to isolate and have been impacted by COVID.
Lara, Eden, thank you both. The South Australian trucking industry is calling for pop-up COVID-19 testing and vaccine hubs to be set up on state borders for truck drivers. It comes as 5 COVID-positive truck drivers from New South Wales entered the state over the last 6 days, leaving trails of exposure sites. Queensland authorities are also on alert after a New South Wales truck driver entered that state while infectious.
Canberrans will get to enjoy more time outdoors with exercise time doubling and playgrounds reopening later today. The lockdown will remain for at least another 2 weeks. The ACT recorded 23 new cases yesterday. Almost half were in the community while infectious.
The ABC can reveal hundreds of millions of dollars in JobKeeper payments flowed to companies whose turnover doubled or even tripled. Figures from the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office show that almost 20,000 businesses tripled their turnover between April and June last year, yet accrued about $370 million in JobKeeper payments during that time. Another 15,000 firms received JobKeeper cash despite doubling their turnover.
Doctors are pleading with state and federal leaders for urgent action, warning the health system is at breaking point. National Cabinet has signed off on more freedoms once vaccine targets of 70 and 80% are met. But the Australian Medical Association has written to the Prime Minister saying the system will be unlikely to cope with an easing of restrictions. It says more staff, beds and funding are urgently needed.